up in the Western Cape, and I remember years where, even when I was a kid, you weren't allowed to water your garden or anything like that because of water
Yeah.
restrictions. So when
Yeah.
I hear that, it always makes me wonder why they haven't put things in place. And people say, yeah, but fresh water, this and that. And I say, yeah, but we're on a planet that's 75% water. There should never be a water shortage.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the water doesn't go away. It evaporates, but it comes back down again. You know what I mean? That's a
Correct.
cycle.
Yeah. That's true. It's true.
So I think countries are just backwards in coming forwards when it comes to actually putting things in place to make sure that they have everything they need. Because and you can see it since the pandemic, because a lot
Yeah.
of countries are experiencing shortages of supply. We've become reliant on other countries. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I strongly think South Africa needs to move back and become less reliant on other countries for all sorts
You're
of
right.
things. But it really
Yeah.
means that the farming in South Africa has to step its game up, because I think we are importing quite a lot of stuff, food stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
No.
haven't actually looked at the imports, actually, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. But I was looking at resources yesterday on the web, doing a bit of research. In South Africa, we don't suffer from the lack of anything, actually. Probably fresh water if there's a drought, but
Yeah.
other than that, we don't really suffer from the lack of anything. We've got enough farmland and everything to produce for ourselves,
Correct. Yeah.
and I think they just need to focus and get back onto it. I was reading an
Correct.
interesting article just now about the farmland, and you know what's
Yeah.
been happening over the years. But there's
Yeah.
so many things out there that when you read them, you just get angry. Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts, how are you
Hello,
this evening?
I'm brilliant. It looks like
Auntie.
I can
How
see.
are you, Andre?
Hey man, I'm being busy.
My favorite person.
Yeah.
Should we accept Jan? Accept.
Yeah, we have to, man. He's related.
Yeah.
I was going to say, from now on, it might have to be just Dr. Roberts.
All right.
Oh,
They stole
Hello,
my name,
Andre.
little
Hey
shit.
Jan, how are you?
I'm very well, and even better for seeing you, my friend. How are you?
Yeah. No, been busy, but no, it's
Good.
going well. I'm going to switch off my video anyway, but just to say hi to you guys, just save a little bit on data, and the Wi-Fi makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Activity on this side is not very good, so yeah, it's touch and go, touch and go.
Yeah. And how are you, Gunther?
fantastic. Without
Fantastic.
elastic. Oh, wait, I shouldn't. Yeah, I shouldn't say without the other thing you
Fantastic without
described.
elastic.
Yeah. Well, don't. If that's the case, don't stand up.
Yeah,
Which
that
side is
was
this
an
thing?
advert years ago, I think, when they brought pantyhose out for the first time. Fantastic without elastic.
Okay. The things you remember.
Hey,
But it
this is
shows you how
Gunther in his wild
indoctrinating
days. He
adverts
needed to
are.
know how to get it off.
Aye.
Adverts are a good example of indoctrination, eh?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I think we're ready to rock and roll.
In 4 minutes?
Yeah. Recording name.
I was going to say, I'm just cheating. I'm reading the articles quickly.
I just picked up a very good article on farming in South Africa now.
I was reading that. The one
I
you
haven't read. I saw
emailed.
it coming in, but I haven't read it
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah,
That's the one I'm busy
It's-
cheating
it's,
and reading quickly.
some interesting stats there, and I think
Yeah.
it's one of the most accurate stats I've seen as far as numbers. Population size, no, population in poverty and things like that. The others are all lying
The 34
about the
million, eh?
numbers. Yeah. So, but you've got to read a lot of articles to get the truth because they're all sort of sucking their thumbs most of the time, I think. I mean, I was reading an interesting article to get today about UIF services in South Africa, unemployment insurance, which is actually run by the Receiver of Revenue. And so somebody went in and had a look at what was happening because there were obviously a lot of complaints during the COVID lockdown when people didn't get UIF. And so that according to them, they take 30,000 calls a day, right? But they can't answer them, but they get 30,000 calls a day. They have 8 staff members in the call center that are handling 3,000 calls a day. Well, I'd like to meet those people because they're my heroes. If you can handle 3,000 calls a day between 8 people. But it just shows you how they lie, because it's impossible.
Yeah,
That
that's
would mean each
350
person was
calls.
taking 375 calls each a
375
day.
per person.
So have you had a busy week so far, Jan?
Yeah, we've been working on a new list as well, and exciting list. So I'll need to get it out there now.
I've been trying to connect with different NPOs to see if I can, get into the different communities and stuff. So some of them are slow to reply. Some of them don't reply.
Where the heck did you just go?
In a minute to go. And we're all ready and staring at the TV.
This is a hectic
Oh, there you
article, eh?
A hectic.
Article.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's webinar, the New Nation Education Nonprofit Organization. I'm Gunther Wallendorf, the CEO, and we are running this series of webinars to try and help people in South Africa, small business owners, understand the issues we're facing, and we really are trying to focus on solutions more than the problems. I think most of us know what the problems are, but we want to focus on the solutions. As small business owners in South Africa, they're really struggling and feeling the pinch because of the lack of employment of so many people in South Africa. In a country where most of the people are employed, it's simply a case of marketing your business, and each year you tend to get more customers coming along to see what you've got for sale. But in a country where the employment numbers keep dropping, that becomes extremely difficult. So I would like to introduce you to my panel of guests, or our panel of experts. And I'd like to introduce you first to Dr. Arthur Roberts. She's a philanthropist, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Celebrating Humanity and Key Leadership International, operating nationally and globally for over 24 years. She is also an intentional keynote speaker, leadership coach, diversity inclusion specialist. The Compassion Leaders of Influence value is being implemented in Lebanon, Ireland, UK, USA, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Doctorate in Leadership, Diversity and Inclusion, Oxbridge Institute for Professionals, UK. Influential Woman of the Year 2020 South Africa, Nation Builders Award 2020 South Africa, Global Presence Ambassador 2020 USA, JCI Santon Training Partners of the Year Award 2021, Distinguished Fellow Award, Oxford Institute of Professionals, UK 2022. Next, we have Mr. Jan Roberts. Jan Roberts is the co-founder of the Key Leadership Institute Pty Limited and the founder of JR Speakers Club based here in South Africa and Scotland. As an international Les Brown Platinum keynote speaker, he has already spoken on 4 continents about a variety of subjects from personal development, bullying, human behavior, and living intentionally to leadership. As an executive director and President's Advisory Council member with the John Maxwell team, his focus is to change and impact the way people are developed using world-class innovative methods that are proven internationally. He is also a globally acclaimed motivational key speaker. And then we have Mr. Andreas Jacobus Schlemmer, who is currently retired, but has been employed for the last 3 years with the Eskom Expo for Young Scientists as a provincial coordinator in the Eastern Cape. Andrea has 40 years experience in education, has experience in all learning areas and taught mainly maths and science. His 40 years include 8 years as the principal of White River Primary School in Mpumalanga, 2 years as principal at La School Excelsior in Port Elizabeth, and 12 years as the principal at Settlers Park Primary, also in Port Elizabeth. Andrea holds a BA degree and diploma in education with majors in botany and zoology. He has a B.Ed degree in biblical studies and continues his studies. He has an ACI diploma, which he completed in 2009 at NMU. He followed a 2-year course in mentorship with the Northwest University during 2016. Andre is passionate about nature conservation, and as an honorary ranger in the Kruger National Park, his love for science led to the Settler Science Expo, which he organized for 12 years. As an experienced expo judge at Eskom Expo for Young Scientists, he uses his field of expertise in his daily activities as provincial coordinator in his province to assist learners with their project. He has a great passion for leadership development and 21st century skills development. And Andre is also one of the directors at the New Nation Education nonprofit organization. So we are talking this evening about poverty, mainly obviously in South Africa, because that's where we all reside. And this is where we want to have the highest impact. But I think poverty around the world have got very similar causes and problems. So without further ado, I would like to ask Mrs. Arthur Moore Roberts to give us some insights on what she sees in South Africa as a problem to do with poverty, or problems to do with poverty.
Thank you so much, Gunther, and welcome to our fellow panelists as well. It's always a privilege to be on a panel discussion with all of you, and especially with Gunther and the vision that he has. And I think that one of the important parts that is causing a lot of poverty would be the unequal opportunities, the inequality in terms of employment opportunities in the country. For me, that is a big one. And, talking to a lot of the people there on different platforms, the thing that comes up is development, education. And as I was reading through the United Nations and a couple of articles, they were talking about land distribution and all of the various areas that could add value in terms of alleviating poverty. But the one thing that struck me the most was the minimum wage policy, because people are underpaid in this country on every level. And if you look at the minimum wage is now sitting at 23 Rand, where it used to be 21 something. And that means effectively every household should have a minimum of 3,700 if they're doing a 40-hour week. My challenge there is that our South African mentality is pay as little as possible, but actually take advantage as much as possible for people in their environment. So you have a situation where skilled people are no longer living in our country. So we've got a brain drain. And when you look at who is going to be in a position to employ people, it would be entrepreneurs, it'd be business owners, it'd be companies and corporates. But if through the pandemic, close to 3 million people were laid off. I don't know the exact numbers, but close to 3 million people were laid off during the pandemic alone. You're sitting with unemployment at a high level. We're talking about unequal pay, a minimum wages never being paid. We've got unequal skills development. So we've got a lot of unskilled people in our country. And so we're sitting in a position where there's so much opportunity in terms of areas for growth and also for international and economic growth and influence in this country. But if we take a step back, it's all people issues. And unfortunately, those are all guided by government policies. And government policies are led by people who have got their own insular thinking of what can they get and what can they have. So we've got a government of entitlement based on what do they feel entitled to in terms of international input funds, grants, and it all gets mismanaged. So looking at poverty from all those various aspects, the big thing that's standing out for me is rural development. And I think that is one area that is not looked at as much as it should, though I do know that in government policies right now, rural development is being given some serious thought, but especially women empowerment, women in rural areas being developed to take over environments that were normally not given equal opportunities because it was male dominated. And we're starting to see an increase and an improvement in that level, but that's going to take some time. So those are the areas that I would love to actually, delve into when we're talking about poverty. Is how do we get into an environment where we adjust the thinking and the mindsets around the solutions coming to the fore with the assets and what we've got already in our country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osimo Roberts, for that. I would like to ask Andre, as being so many years in the education space, if we look at the future of, and we can talk about any country because I think education is really something every country should be looking at. What is your feelings on the current education for people in the future? Because if we look at the future, it's nothing like the past.
Good. Thanks a lot. I was just thinking when Dr. Archie was busy talking, and I thought about my previous schools where I taught, and it varied from much more developed schools up to schools where we really financially struggled. And the one thing came to mind, I remember I became principal at a specific primary school, and I looked at the income, the average income of my parents throughout. And at that stage, it was between 2004 and 2006. I've worked out the average income of the parents in my community and my school were less than 3,000 and up to 3,500 per month. That was the average income of the parents, the households of those schools. So to a certain extent, I'm used to the poorest school. I've come through some different schools, and I actually got used to it. My last school at Settlers Park, for instance, I've looked at the average income. It was a little bit higher, but still it was of the lower income group. So you tend to start to make plans. And, you know, as far as the more you try and help people, some people really appreciate what you are doing, but you always get the problem of, where does the liability of your parents, what is it what they really want to pay? Is it for the education, or is it for their child to get to the school? And from my understanding, most of the money were paid for the transport, just to get the child at the school, a decent school, to get a decent education. So what lacks now is they haven't got money to pay for the education. And that to me was a tough one. So how do you distinguish between which one is more important? Education, and try to get more resources and try to develop your learners, try to get more teachers, those sort of things, or just to get your learner to the school. So there's two kinds of things I think we need to look at this point as well. So for certain parents, the most important thing is just get your child to a decent school. Very important. So now I look at government itself, and if you look at poverty, poverty is as old as the history itself. And we've had poverty throughout history. And I think for the next couple of 100 or 1,000 years, most probably, we will have poverty around the world. What we need to try and establish is, how far can we manage what we are able to manage, and try to make it better for a certain percentage people. You will never satisfy everyone. Not everyone will ever be satisfied. There will always be the ones that are on the last end of the row. So now you need to establish, and numbers, I think in South Africa in particular, numbers are the one stronghold for the government and the country itself, because they need numbers to keep them in position. But I also want to make a prediction that maybe it's going to be the numbers that's going to be the downfall at the end of the day, because what they are busy doing is not sustainable for a very long period of time. And all the grants and everything is fine to try and help, but up to what stage are you going to be able to provide that? Somewhere along the line, something is going to dry up. And that's when the numbers have become so used to getting that they are not able to work towards certain things. I like the idea about the skills development and opportunities that we are missing out on. While we are busy talking about prioritizing getting your child to the school, the transport, and the education itself, a lot of emphasis has been put on the transport. Just imagine what the difference and the outcome could have been if the main focus was on educating people, developing certain skills to improve themselves, to work for themselves, to make their life a better life at the end of the day. So I think for the intro, this is more or less my contribution, and I would like to hear some others as well. But from my side, education, my experience.
Thank you very much, Andre. Great to hear from you again. Mr. Jan Roberts, I know that you love to talk about agriculture and how we can help people. and Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts already touched on the problem with the salaries or the wages. And I strongly believe a lot of young people leave rural areas or farming areas to go to the city purely because the wage levels on the farms are quite low, and they think by coming to the city they're going to get better wages. But not only that, the fact that there are no jobs in the future in the cities anyway, really, if we think about it, and jobs will be able to become more scattered or decentralized, so to speak, because we're all working from computers and technology nowadays. How are we going to be able to get the wages so that the youngsters stay on the farmland and work the farmland?
Yeah, well, always a good question, because then especially the younger generation now, they get this idea because of social media and the media that IT and IoT is where it's at. Sitting in front of a computer in a nice shirt and all that without getting their hands dirty and making lots of money. But that is not the real truth either, because so many people don't get there, and it's always evolving. I think between all the Google and all these and Twitter and all that, I think I heard a figure this week that 90,000 people are getting laid off in these different areas. So we can keep looking at that, but there's that one thing, and you said I like talking about farming for the simple reason is that it's part of the bottom of Maslow's pyramid. The food security, a roof over your head, clean water, somewhere to sleep, and those, and of course employment. And when any one of these are not met, we've got unrest, we've got uncertainty, we've got desperation, we've got anxiety, stress, and all the kind of things that go with it. Now, I don't say that people who have got money haven't got stress either, but I mean, it's easy to sometimes say, well, these people are okay because they're used to it. But I mean, unless you've ever been there, you'll never get used to that kind of thing. And when we look at the skills development as well, I mean, I love what our friend Andre talks about. The educational side of it, to have a better body of education for them, so they're more prepared when they come into real life. And I saw something that part of the problem in poverty is that and South Africa has now been recognized as the most unequal country in the world, and that is one of the major causes of poverty, apparently, which I'd never really thought into. But there's all kinds of statistics go with it. But when I saw a figure that was brought to me by a friend from an entrepreneurial platform, Cubimo, and he said that by 2030, Africa will import at least $150 billion worth of food every year. Now, when we started a discussion about it, I thought, well, that's absolutely crazy, because I mean, and another statistic was that the Netherlands are the second biggest exporter of food. Now, anybody who knows the Netherlands, you could hide the country somewhere in any of the provinces in South Africa, and you'd never find it again. So then to say that country has got something, so there is something there, that how can a small country like that produce so much food and export so much, when here with Africa, it's the biggest continent in the world. It's got the resources as far as that I said, I do some TikToks about challenges now, but I said the youngest continent, but the continent with the youngest population, where more than 60% are 35 and younger. So we've got all those resources, we've got plenty of land. I think we need to start focusing again on getting back to the land, to getting farming. And yes, we need to take a modern approach, that we need to get youngsters also to get in IT and IoT, because the combination of modern farming and the existing farming, that will cause the yields to be much higher, because, we talk about vertical farming and permaculture and all those kind of hydroponics. There is so many amazing ways of farming, and that's why the Dutch are exporting so much. So we can learn a lot, and there is a huge need, because look around the world, they're talking about food shortages on the shelves now because of whatever has happened in the last few years. So we need to maybe entice or also educate the young people that, you know, there is an enormous amount of money to be made in food supplies, and that's a whole chain. It's not just to getting the hands dirty or working 7 days a week on a farm, whatever. But there is also the supply chain and the processing and the transport and all these kind of things. But you know, think for a minute that if instead of because South Africa used to be a major exporter of food, and now they're a net importer of food. So there's something has gone wrong, and it doesn't matter. You know, we're not talking about politics or anything like that, but something has gone horribly wrong. That we're now looking and there is and it's got to do with the poverty as well. And unless we actually, I said a long time ago, we were talking at the time, it was in the 90s. They were talking about saving the whales. And it actually that somebody made a statement, and it stuck with me. Then I says, you know, if we can do anything we like to save the world, but if we save the people will save the whales. Now that bring that into today's, if we can save the people, because most of the major challenges are in poverty, and in the last couple of years, I think between 100 and 150 million more people have dived into extreme poverty. When before COVID, there was fewer people around the world who went to bed without at least one meal a day. And now that is exacerbated again. So we need to make sure that we grow food. There is a lot of money in food. There is a lot of skills development. There is a lot of need of young people to get into the communities, to get into farming, in all aspects. But it needs education first. You know, what is it involved? It doesn't mean that everybody's got to come home with dirt under their nails every night, but it means that we have satisfaction that everybody will eventually have a meal in their stomach, and you know, not only not importing 150 billion worth, because if you have to import it or you have it, that's a difference of 300 billion. But exporting, because there is plenty of space in Africa to grow food, so there's no reason why it can't happen. But we need the skills development, we need education, we need the training, and we need the awareness through, as our dear friend Andre said, education is where it's at.
Thank you very much, Jan. I was reading another article today, you know, or I was looking at the land mass of South Africa, and according to the stats here I've got in front of me, forestries and fisheries, they say approximately 48.5% of the total land area of South Africa is utilized for agricultural purposes. However, they do say the amount of arable land that is being used is only 9.5%, and I'm assuming that they're talking about crops for that, because I think the livestock and farming and forestry take up the rest. But it means we have a serious amount of land that is not being utilized correctly in our country, and it's not that we're short of land. I think it's the continuous wheeling and dealing by certain people trying to make themselves wealthy that is preventing the country from moving forward in the farming sector. But if we go away from farming for a minute and just talk about communities, in township communities and stuff like that, we've got 32 million plus that are unemployed adults in South Africa. And if you look at the numbers and say, well, if you know each community actually needs at least one of everything, and it doesn't matter what job description you give it, each community needs one of those people. So whether it be a doctor or a dentist or a motor mechanic or a plumber, each community needs people with those skills. The problem is, I think people, when they get skilled in a community, or they are skilled, they don't really focus on their community. They leave their community and go out to try and earn more money within the city or wherever the closest big community or businesses are, so that they can earn more. But I strongly feel that if we can help the people with training, which is what the New Nation education is all about, and help them to understand that within a community you can make just as much money, provided everybody understands how businesses work and how a community actually should work and collaborate. Because history tells us this is exactly what happened. This is how cities started, in small villages, and everybody was doing their own thing, trade or skill or whatever, and they were selling services to each other. And I strongly believe that is what we're going to go back to in the future. I just hope that we can do some of that before the situation gets worse. And I know Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts, been very involved with diversity and inclusion. How do you see something like this playing out in the communities, which are urban communities rather than rural communities?
Well, that's a great question. And, one of the things that keeps coming up is the word education and training. And sitting on this platform, we all have been involved in education and training in one way or the other. Where I see diversity coming into play is people miss the inclusion part, because what we do is we remove skilled people based on the past histories of this country, and we use it as our excuse for why we're bringing equality but more power to people that have been previously disadvantaged. Now, understand where the pain is coming from, but in order to heal, you actually need to look for solutions to overcome that pain. And unfortunately, we have this habit of keep looking at what happened in the past, but we're not looking at our current situations that are being created right now. Diversity in communities, in urban communities, means that people come together with one voice, not a separated voice. It means that we all collaborate and understand what the word collaboration means, because it's about a quality of life for all South Africans, not one type of South African, not one South African who feels or behaves more superior than the other, not one who feels inferior to another, and none of these hate stories. Because while we're hating each other, we actually look at people based on the color of their skin and we demean them to nothingness, when there is massive amounts of skilled people already here. And one of the things that makes sense in terms of collaborative thinking in communities is that we need to partner with each other to create that upskilling that Andre was talking about. The skills development is lying in the wealth and the knowledge of even the people who are no longer employed because they're at retirement age. We're talking about a country that's sitting with people who've got so much to give, but with the entitlement mentality, people just want to take rather than reciprocate, and have that mentality of how can we learn from each other and with each other based on you owe me. And I think that's a dangerous situation we're sitting with here, because even with the massive tract of land that is available right now, that they're looking at government level for agriculture, the challenge there is that who do you give it to? Because it's becoming community-based led projects. Now, if you look at it, they're actually trying to strengthen the ability of the local chiefs to handle these. But if people understood African principles of leadership, you would know that you would need to combine the brilliance of the Western culture with development and infrastructure, understanding the business skills of all of the other cultures coming together, and then looking to uplift a community by empowering them to run the project from the beginning by being given the training, ability, and the skill to understand what does it entail, what's the longevity of it, how do you sustain something and grow it into a profit-based environment. We worked for a number of years in rural areas. And when the government actually Department of Water Affairs put running water and pipes into communities, they forgot to actually ask whether the communities wanted it. Because what they were doing is, in their false belief that they were uplifting people, there was nothing wrong with those communities. They were self-sufficient. They lived off the land. They understood that the gatherings at the river was the one chance that women had to connect and communicate everything that's going on. It was their support groups. It was their collaborative thinking. It was teamwork. They knew when something was going to happen, when somebody's building a home, when to meet, what to bring. Putting in the simple thing like the pipes was brilliant because there was infrastructure, but if people don't understand how to maintain it, that is where we come to the point where in our quest to bring and modernize an entire country, we have forgotten to educate and include them in the decision making. And if you look at communities in the urban area, how many people come together to talk about the potholes in the area? Or do we just complain about it as couch politicians? And then we complain about the uselessness of everybody. But what about the engineers who are working in these jobs? Were they skilled enough to be able to do their job by connecting and partnering with previous engineers who've got experience in that environment? So when you look at it, I mean, I was looking at tenders recently, and one of the tenders, it was very weird because they're asking for training companies to teach people how to pour asphalt for just to do these potholes. Thought, why do you need to train people when you already have got skilled people who've already worked in this environment? Bring them out of retirement, get over the color issues, and say to people, let's create a mentoring, partnering relationship. So we're missing opportunities. We're not in poverty because we deserve to be there. We brought it upon ourselves because we're so stuck in history that we don't know how to stop complaining long enough to actually give a hand out and a hand up to people. Instead of sitting there and saying, you owe me, what about stop talking about people in the racist connotations? Jan did an amazing TikTok. And this really pissed me off because he was talking about solutions. And the idiocy of the complaints that came through was, you're a scavenger, you're white, you're coming to take over our country. And I'm thinking, get over yourself. The whole point of that talk was, what can we as South Africans bring together as a collective, as a nation, as solutions? Instead of continuously having those old granny stories and being complacent and feeling proud of yourself that everybody's racist, look at yourself and say, what can I do and who do I need to bring? Which person in the rural communities can I partner with and uplift because I understand entrepreneurship, understand business? How do we help women in rural areas to develop their skills so that when those projects and the funds come to those areas, they are already skilled enough to say, let me help you project manage this. Let me do the business skill side. Let me do the banking and accounting, which means you've got the skill sets in the community. So you don't have to pay amazing people at high prices in urban areas at consultant rates, when all of that kind of money can be brought back into the community for upliftment, for creating more infrastructure and so much more. I mean, there's so much you can speak about when it comes to diversity, but it's about just valuing each other as human beings and get to the point of being human and respecting people at the level that they wish to be respected, where they are crying out for knowledge and wisdom and expertise. But we're sitting with it on our computers. We're sitting on it with our access to networking and our ability to access technology. There's a lot of people in this country who are in poverty because they don't have access to that. That's the unequal part in this country that we need to develop and look at. And I just think, even with Andre speaking about the biggest cost was transport. If you had retired people or people that don't have much money, and you had few families just putting a little bit of money together to pay for petrol for these vehicles, you've created employment. You've created an income. You've income generated for somebody. They can pay off their vehicles. They have got freedom. You also know that your children are definitely being picked up at a specific time and they're looked after. It costs a cost for for a lot of people, but it brings an income for many. And there's a lot of young people who could do those jobs. You look at the Uber drivers, they're young and they're older. But the fact is, there's enough options and opportunity to get out of poverty. And a lot of people say, but you don't understand. Yes, we do. It's because the majority of the money gets blindsided at top levels and they never see it. They only see promises that are broken. It's not their fault. we put these guys into government. So we need to stand up and stand strong and look amongst ourselves as community. What can we do differently?
Thank you very much, Dr. Arthi Roberts, Moore Roberts. I was just thinking about the, Andre, I was just thinking about the schooling side of it. You've been involved with the young scientists for quite a few years. And what do you think could be done at schools more to help kids with the entrepreneurship? Because young scientists are actually entrepreneurs, aren't they?
I was just thinking about a couple of things, and the more we talk about it, one thing triggers something else, and you come to think about some of the things that you've been doing for so long. You've taken it for granted. I mean, the time that I've been with Eskom Expo for Young Scientists, we've seen the most brilliant projects from youngsters, and it varies from grade 4 to grade 12. Some of our students went overseas. They've done wonderfully compared to other parts of the world as well. So the ideas, it's there. The main thing again is it's a few. And for those that are getting the opportunity, they are making the most of it. And then we talk about the effectiveness of our schools. Some people go to school just to get the day over and done with. But what they do with that education, it's not that important to them. I was thinking about, all of us experience some other time. You go into a building, you have to do something, and they put you on a chair, and you move from one place to the next one. They actually employ someone to tell you, so now it's your turn to move to the next chair. And then you need to move on to the next chair again. I mean, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, everyone knew exactly. You come in, you stand in a line. There were more than enough people to help you, to serve you. Now you get to a counter, there's 10 counters, there's only 2 people working. So the effectiveness of how things have been done in our country, that's part of our poverty. Because we can look at poverty in so many different ways. And you look at money on one side, but the way that we act is a different way of poverty. And my question always is this: are you going to do your job only to get a check paid at the end of the month? Or are you going to do your job to add value and to contribute to something? And again, it comes to attitude. If we don't change our attitude, we're not going to change anything. And it has to start with me. We can point fingers as much as we want, but you set the example. And if you can set the example for 1 or 2 others to follow in your footsteps, you've started, you've created something. And I think that's where we need to go. We need to make sure whatever we are doing, we are influencing the people around us in a positive way to influence our community at the end of the day in a positive way as well. Then we are assisting, then we add value, then we bring about change. Then we can start talking about all these skills that we want to bring about, and we can get them to work. But that's what we need to do. So to me, the more we start talking about things, the more things come to mind. But that is the one thing that I definitely need to emphasize, is the attitude in which we are doing things. How proud am I about what I'm busy doing? Or is it just another job to receive a paycheck at the end of the day? And that's not what it's all about. Thanks.
Thank you, Andre. Appreciate that. And I hope there are a lot of youngsters listening. Jan, I would like to talk to you, or you to talk into how, because we use the values-based leadership program as a platform or a starting point in all our training, I'd like you to talk into how a values-based leadership program can help poor, struggling people.
He's just trying to find his unmute button.
No, it's
I sent you a hint.
yeah. No. It's
we
not
are.
the same. You cannot just unmute yourself. You get a message. So, but yeah, no. Again, a great question, and Andre already talked into this. You know, about the attitude, and because that's a value that we, and I love it because people say, you know, but how can I have a better attitude when everything around me, the power failures, you know, load shedding, poverty is the biggest thing. I mean, there's so many poor people, lack of health, lack of nutrition, lack of services, lack of a good education, and the list goes on, and you can make that list as big as you want. But I always, when I talk about, especially about attitude, I talk about a wonderful, it's only a small little book, but it was by Viktor Frankl, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning. And he talked into, he was a Jewish survivor of a concentration camp, and everybody else around him passed away. And he said, you know, the one thing they cannot take away from you is your freedom to choose, your freedom to choose your own attitude. And I think we need to be very aware of that. And that's a simple one, but it's so powerful when he talks into how he did that when there was torture and all kinds of things going on. But it is a very important value, because you know your attitude decides your altitude in life, and that's no wonder then that so many people keep down, because you attract what you think about. So the value of thinking, the value of connection, the value of hope, the value of respect. There is so many different values that we've heard about many of them, but do we understand them, and do we live them? You know, and transparency and honesty and integrity are just another few that just come off the top. But when we, the good thing is, you know, we've got so many case studies done now. We've just working with a few more, and we just had a few more, that the positive impact values has on any person. I always know when we train facilitators, we always tell, I always tell people, I say, you know, you need to take this home, because what's going to happen is when you actively get involved in basic human values, and Artie and myself, instead of calling it values-based leadership, we call it sustainable personal development, which is really what it is. But I say this will change your life. No ifs, buts, and maybes. This is now 10th year that I've been involved in it. But you know, case studies that in communities, even we've been in the poorer communities, and we're working in one right now in Alex. It's they say there might be as many as 1 million people living there, and to see what the values have done for the people there, and it's not about us. We're only messengers, but to see what the people are doing and the meaning it's bringing into their life, because they start connecting at the heart level with other people. They start to understand their fellow human beings who might or might not be in similar or worse or better situations. They start talking to each other, because one of the biggest problems that we're having now is, especially with all the modern electronics we've got, the lack of communication. It was always a bad thing, because most of the problems in any organization, in any country, wars have started because of ineffective or lack of communication. So to sit around the table, you know, every week, and to see just to see the difference, the way people light up when they start having a voice. Because most people have no voice anymore, and the youngsters have a voice too, because young people matter. And I always say, you're never too old to learn, and I can say that, well, many of us can say that. I'm never too old to learn, and we're never too young to teach. So we can, what it really means is we can learn a lot from each other, and we can do that sitting around the table, but we can't learn that if we don't communicate. But to see the youngsters coming with things to the table, I mean, whether it's in a mastermind or sitting in these values, but when they come to the table with ideas and things that they've been successful in, because they also share successes with each other. Now, that doesn't happen every day of your life. And setting some simple, basic goals, because if they learn to set simple, basic goals on a daily basis, then when they become intentional about this, and they learn that every week through the values, and people say, but values and leadership, it's out there, and look at the values. Why should we worry about it? Because look at our governments, and leadership is failing because of a lack of values. But Andre already mentioned it as well, and so did you. That we talk about be the change you want to see in a world, and most people don't have any idea what that really means. But the slogan for values-based leadership is transformation begins with me. Now, and that's what as Artie said, it pissed her off a little bit, because I bring a lot of very short 1 to 2 minute videos just now, and I continue that. But at the moment I'm talking about the issues we've got in Africa, and especially in South Africa. But what we already see, and that's so ingrained, and that's why we need to connect around something more positive, like values, because I already see that people, it doesn't matter what age they are, they start blaming Christianity, they start blaming scavengers, as I say, and white people. They call me a German and all kinds of things. Sorry, Gunther. But I mean, but it is ingrained to complain and say, okay, he's talking about the bad things. What do you know? And you're one of them colonialists. I said, come on. We need to start getting back to basics, and basics start at values. Values are the foundation of life, of your social environment, your business, and of your leadership. And if you ever want to be better than those people you complain about, you better start looking in the mirror. And without saying it all the time, these people at first, when they get into these values, it's a little bit weary because it's new and it's different and it's strange. But as the weeks progress, you see people flourishing. And that's what leadership is all about, because now people say, how can I become one of them facilitator things that you do? Because I want to be involved in something bigger than myself. And I think what we need to instill in our young people today, that there is a life of significance. It's not only about success. It's not only about me. And I know it's very easy to not think about yourself when you're hungry and you don't know where your next meal comes from, or whether you're going to have a roof over your head, or you're going to have clean drinking water, or you've got family who are sick and things. But we need to start. When we start focusing on others, our problems become worse anyway. And significance is all about adding value to other people. And as John Maxwell said, people of value people. So what better way than sit around the table? And it doesn't matter if you're in a community, or if you're in the city, or if you're in a school, or if you're in government, or wherever you are. When you bring values to the table, people start to communicate. People start to share of themselves. We just trained the CEO, and we went through 2 values. And I said to him afterwards, I says, we've been here going through 2 values with 4 of us. Artie was there as well, involved. And it was only basically 45 minutes. And says, something, I already know this about you. I know something about your wife. I know something about your son. I know something about your social life. I know something. It says, and we've only been here for a little while, and everybody's talked a little bit. And it says, I knew something about. And so I said about the other people around the table what I already know about them. I would never have known that. I've worked in the oil industry, and for many years, all we talked about is the job. But we need to start connecting at the heart level. That's what I'm saying. We need to, and the only way we're going to do this is try to, as Stephen Covey used to say, try to understand before being understood. And when we do that, in this country as in any other, when we start to understand the other people, never mind the race, the religion, the environment, the background, the age, the gender, when we start doing that and we start to understand other people without having to be scared, because we're a very sensitive nation, or I'll include myself now, but we're a very sensitive nation. I'm not quite as sensitive maybe, but when we start to understand how other people are and what goes on in their life, because we're all talking about ourselves. So what goes on in your life? What your thoughts are about a certain value, like listening or connection or hope or respect. What does it mean to me? So when I talk about me, people learn about me, and I learn about all the other people, regardless where they come from. But now we understand. They might be from Indian background. They might be a Zulu. They might be an Afrikaner. But it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. There is no judgment, and we start learning about each other. We start connecting with each other. We start to understand, and it's only, we talk about the Rainbow Nation, it's only when we start uniting. We're always here, always so much stronger together. Yet we keep dividing ourselves. We keep talking divisive language, because it's also the language we talk, and not about you this and you that. No, talk about yourself. If you talk about yourself, there is no divisive language anymore, because now we are happy that people are starting to understand us. Now we can have conversations, not just about values, about everything in life, but in a respectful manner. So values really are the foundation of all of life. And I think that, it is, as soon as families can do that with their children, even when they're much younger and they can't read yet, the father or mother or the older brother or sister can be a facilitator or a cousin or an uncle. They can do it in the communities. They can do it wherever they want. But once they get these values in their hands, I can promise you, we work with transformation of entire countries. And I can promise you, South Africa will transform. South Africa will become a better country, because South African people matter and South African people care. And we also just need to change the attitude slowly. It's going to be a slow process, but we need to start here, not here. Not, they need to change, it's their fault. No. What can I do to change me to become a better person, so I can do more and add more to the society and to our communities and to our families?
Thank you very much, Jan. I just love the power of the values, actually, because, I've been involved with you guys for 5 or 6 years now with values-based leadership. And I'm always impressed that every time you read them, it's not like you've read it for the first time, but it's like there's something there that you never heard before, the time before you did it. So there's always something in there for everybody. And it also brings the into the mind. And I think these are the important things about such a program. I would like to just say to everybody, this is the New Nation Education not-profit organization webinar on how to change the direction of South Africa. And I would urge people in communities to start talking to their community leaders and start pushing for change. Because unless the people stand up and do it for themselves, it's not going to happen. I would love Dr. Arthur Moore to give us 1 minute on advice to people that are struggling in South Africa.
Thank you for that. And always listening to Jan is so inspiring. Every single time I listen to him about values, it's incredible. I think the biggest thing that I would encourage people to do is come from a level of compassion, because I believe that is the one thing that's going to help us all to heal. Because if we can let go of hatred and anger, and we can look with compassion at the journey that people who don't have enough or a lot, and the journey that they've got is so different to us, that we take for granted because we've had a little bit more than some people. And if we looked at our lives with gratitude and look at how we can pay it forward and connect with people who don't have, and look at how we can actually guide and support them better. We're not talking about giving money. We're talking about upskilling, sharing our knowledge, sharing our wisdom, but coming from a level of compassion and gratitude, not from a level of anger and hatred, because we're so stuck on that, it blinds us from the brilliance and the beauty of the human being. And I think that as we're walking this experience right now on this earth, the human experience, everybody's crying out to be seen as human beings. And they want to feel like they exist and that they're worthy and worth it. Putting a meal on somebody's table, giving them the ability to feel hope and to feel that, they're worth it, makes a massive difference. And every single one of us, if you look at 34 odd million people who are in under the poverty line, there's close to 55 million people in South Africa or more. If all of us did a little bit to contribute towards that, get into the New Nation Education platform, connect with Gunther and find out what can I do, how can I help, contribute a little bit every single month to upliftment of people. If you don't have time, ask, how can I volunteer? What do you need? And bring in resources and find a way that you can actually help people. It makes a massive difference. It doesn't have to be massive, but the fact that you stepped up makes a massive difference to people out there. So my advice is come from a level of compassion, because it makes a massive difference.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts. Andre, I would like you to give us 1 minute of advice to young people in South Africa, people that are struggling.
Yes, thanks. I think the one thing that comes to mind, I've always said it, life is all about choices. And you have a choice to rise out of your circumstances, above your circumstances, and make a success. We've got all the opportunities. We're looking at the 21st century skills development programs, and there are so many of those things. I've seen so many wonderful things already developed from schools, youngsters, and how they have changed their world. And we can do it. We will always have the people that need something. I've never seen somebody risen from their circumstances by just taking the handouts. But I've seen a lot of people risen above the circumstances by getting out and do the hard work. As we say, we talk about all these things. The one thing that comes to mind, doesn't matter what you say. I cannot hear what you say, but you need to do the things and rise above it. Doing things, that's when you start changing the world for yourself as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andre. Jan, one final word from you, please.
Okay, that's it. One final word. Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, but Andre talks about the knowledge gap, you know, from what the gap between what we say and what we do. But and I love that. But for me, since I just talked about values anyway, and my TikTok today was about the value of hope, and I thought, you know, to our youngsters as well, you know, it might not always seem the way you want it to be, and the way you think it should be. And sometimes it might look pretty bleak, but we need to remain hopeful, because Napoleon said many years ago, leaders are sellers of hope. Now, what is everybody selling today? You know, and it's mostly misery and negativity and all those kind of things. But we need to again, Andre said it, the attitude we have. We need to come up with a better attitude. We need to get out of bed, or we need to wake up in the morning, and we're blessed and highly favored that we actually do wake up. It might not always seem like that, but there is so many people who are worse off than any of us. Doesn't matter where you are. But we need to not only be hopeful and you know, look at the future with maybe not rose-tinted glasses, but at least kind of expect that better will come. And when we do that, we can also give hope to those around us. Because I don't know if you've ever sat in a group where everybody's miserable, and you walk away from that, you're tired just listening, and yes, you participated in it. But be that change you want to see in the world. Be that, you know, be that transformed person, and show people that, you know, however bad things are, we can have hope. Because, you know, and I want to finish with this, and people should realize this, because it's so true. Where there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. So let's take that power and run with it, and not only be hopeful, but give hope to everybody around us.
Thank you very much, Jan. This is Gunther Wallendorf from the New Nation Education nonprofit organization. And our project, Uplift a Nation, is exactly that. It's about helping you shift from where you are to where you want to be. Please contact us on our website. Google search any one of us, and you will get all the information you need. Chat soon. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time, and really a great talk again this evening. And see you all soon.